Hey there everybody. Just some quick notes about stairs and stairwells and fitting steps and other frustrating things. So first of all, just drawings here. This is just my calculations for when I'm working out stairwells. First of all, when you're designing a stairwell, decide how big you want the stairwell to be. And in deciding how big, it's not a case of oh, in a perfect world, this is how big I want it to be. It's like, what size base do you want to fit into the said stairwell? This is what you will use to dictate all the rest of your measurements. So, for instance, in the case of infinity, I don't have any different size bases mounted up, but I have different size bases. Sorry, I'm going away. I forgot to grab these. I'm just grabbing my box of bases. In Infinity, you have three different base sizes. So you have standard size bases. I'm not going to strip all the plastic off these. I'm just going to. The standard bases are 25mm diameter, and they are for most of your infantry / smaller playing pieces. Then you have the, I believe they're the 45mm, and then these are 50mm. Just gonna double check that. Nope, it's 40mm and 55mm. Yeah. So these are for your larger pieces, like geckos, drones. I think motorbikes might be mounted on them. I've got a funny feeling actually bikes are now mounted on the 55mm diameter bases. Tags are mounted on 55mm diameter bases. So these are your three sort of things to take into consideration. So when you're designing a stairwell, principally, if you want a 25mm base to fit on it, it has to be a minimum of 30mm width. So this is a stairwell I'm making, and these are actually 33mm width because I want them to be easily placeable. I want the stairwell not to be like, because if you do 25mm, it's like you end up wearing the bases in, so it has to be wider than 25mm. In my opinion, give yourself plenty of space. However, this will never fit on this. You know, the 40mm base is not going to fit into that space, so it's specifically designed for infantry only. Hence, this is an interior building stairwell. However, if you want things to actually take into account the size of, say, in this instance, a tag. I mean, if you're building for something, a game where you have even bigger base sizes. I mean, there are, you know, take a dreadnought from 40k or what have you. Then, if you're building stairwells and you want them to fit on them, then you really have to build them to take that into account. The second part of designing is realizing that you can take this into account in different ways. And one of the main things that I try to do is I consider this kind of, so you build platforms or like what do you call landings. So in the stairwell you want to have steep stairs, landing, steep stairs, landing, steep stairs, landing. So roughly speaking, in the instance of this, I'm going 1/4 inch up for every run. So the landing, this is the landing here, starts, it's an inch elevation, and it's an inch from the point where the first rung here starts to where, well, an inch in, it's only 3/4 of an inch technically, so it's 3/4 of an inch across to go 1 inch up, and that translates to about 7mm in terms of if you're exchanging your measurements over to millimeters, like I end up doing a lot of the time. So this means that, roughly speaking, and taking into account depending on the depth of the material you use for the steps, you can make it so that you can wedge the bases of the miniatures underneath the steps. So smaller miniatures or even larger miniatures, depending on the depth of their base, can be, and how strong the materials you're using to construct your stairwell, can be used to, so you can sort of wedge the base underneath, in which case you can deal with wobbly model syndrome that way. Do take into account that this means that they take up disproportionate quantities of space as well. So again, I mean, the reason I'm just showing you this is how to do your stairs. Each step of your stairs, you want them to be the same width. So you want them, because otherwise, if you're assembling the two sides of the stairwell and you're trying to cut out different sets of 33mm width, you'll end up with a whole load of steps which aren't quite the same width. A way to overcome that is you cut a long strip of the material that you want to be building steps out of, and then you cut them off individually. And also, these two columns of steps here are actually in sequence with where I cut them from, so that I know that they all feed into each other. And this is just to optimize the chance of compatibility between the steps. And then, as you can see here, I've got all the steps stacked individually, and I'm not going to do it right now. If you want to see fitting stairwells, look at different buildings, construction playlists. So I'll do all the building construction playlists separate from starting from scratch. Starting from scratch is really just going to be dealing with sort of modes of doing stuff, whereas if you want to see it in action, you should really go and check it out. Just before I show you how to do steps, this gives you how the elevations work if it was a straight line. When you calculate spirals like this, so this would be the entry point, goes up an inch, goes across an inch, goes up an inch, goes up an inch. You want to calculate 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. So this elevation here is actually 4 inches above the ground level, which means you've got enough room for a 3-inch high miniature to fit in. 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch is about big enough to fit a 55mm base, I believe. Just gonna double check my measurements. No, 1.5 inches not quite big enough to fit a 40mm base. Oh, there you go, 2.5 inch. So I'm looking at, like, by my measurements, 2.5 inches width, which is actually over 60mm, about 63mm, 64mm. I just ran it to 65mm, converting it. So actually, in order to build something big enough for, say, a tag, that's going to be a lot of space that it consumes. So when you're building these, you have to consider what is it you want to be able to go up and down them. Also, how high an elevation. The average elevation is 3 inches in most sort of 28mm heroic scale games. So 1, 2, 3, that's the minimum amount of space you're going to require. So if that's 65, 65, or 2.5, 2.5, that's 5, 1 3, or 3/4, 3/4. So that's 1.5, 2.5, 2.5, 5, 6. That's 6.5 inches. If it was a linear one, that would be 7.25 inches. So it's like your minimum space for going up one elevation with a 55mm diameter base, or a 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch landings in this way, is going to be 6.5 inches. But also, the minimum, if you spiral it, is going to be 2.5, 5, 5.75 inches. And this starts to give you a sense of scale, because you think 5.75 inches, so that's 6 inches. So if you've got a 1 foot square, you're going to use 6 inches of that 1 foot square just to build the stairwell into it. And so once you start building buildings which actually have stairwells and such forth in them, which are actually usable, you warp the scale of the buildings again, because you're trying to make them fit bases. In reality, I think your average stairwell is about 3 foot wide, and 3 foot in terms of game scale, in like in Infinity, say, where it's 28mm, 3 foot would be 16mm. 16mm? No, 14mm. But if you build a 14mm wide stairwell, it's like this wide. It's smaller than the base. You know, the base won't actually fit on it, so you won't be able to fit miniatures in. But in reality, you only need sort of 2.5 foot, maybe 3 foot width in most of these kind of things for normal people to be able to get up and down. I mean, majority of houses in the UK anyway, I can't speak for other countries, I think they're only about 2.5 foot, 3 foot wide which is big enough to get your furniture in and out just. And it's plenty big enough for a human to get in and out, but it's not really game worthy as such. So then if I'm placing stairs, so if, just to say for argument's sake, so I've got all my stair positioning marked up, and if I want to place an individual rung on one of these, always work from the top down, because otherwise your block will get in the way. But if that's the bottom edge, I want to take that, and when I'm gluing these, I want to use the, move the light there, sorry. I want to use the line, take a block. This gives me my 90-degree angle, so then when I'm gluing this, I'm gluing it in neatly at a 90-degree angle. I want this as perpendicular to the surface that it's coming from as I possibly can, because once I've built on one side, especially in the case of sort of this kind of thing, where I have quite a complex set of stairs to insert. Again, if you want to see this, this will be the H-block video assembly line videos. So if I'm looking at, say, a bottom, it's like this step on this one, I can do it the right way around. Just trying to keep it in the light for you. I'll line that up. Now if I want the leading edge, I'll take the leading edge. Take into account, I might bevel these in order to make them sit better into the, give better spacing. And if I'm sitting above the line, then I'll sit above the line like that. And it's just, again, like I say, it's to get it perpendicular. I have botched some of these stairwells, so there'll be a whole load of fitting elements where you'll be able to see all that kind of thing. Because, like, I've botched the cutting. There should be 3mm underneath this line, and there's not. This line should really escape 3mm. You know, there's gaps where there's not going to be enough. On average, there should be. I don't know if you can. Well, if I show this there, you see the gap there. It's big enough for a base, because that will be the next line for the matchup, which means you can wedge the base underneath. But in some places that won't be the case, and this is why you build the landings in. There'll be a landing here, so it's like most of the time you should be able to make it to a landing to make yourself easier. If you're, like I say, if your landing's like sort of an inch apart, or by the time you're taking into account elevation, probably about 1.5 inches apart, normally you'll have enough movement to pick one landing or the other. And for ease of moving miniatures, what have you, and to avoid wobbly model syndrome, it's like just pick a landing. So yeah, that's just a quick overview on if you're thinking about making stairwells and some of the things. I mean, this is really important. You want all of your, you need these rungs to all be the same width. They all need to sit parallel to be able to sit, because otherwise you'll end up where you'll force the sides in and you'll end up with a wiggly, distorted thing where you want actually something that's dead straight. So yeah, I hope this has been of some use to you. It's just a quick one, but enjoy your modelling. Take care everybody, have a good one. Bye bye.